Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to walk you through how to convert your ERD entity relationship diagrams and implement them in Microsoft Access. This is going to help you with your last group assignment submission where you have to turn in your DBMS for the medical practice that you just designed the system for. So the tools that I'm using in order to import my ERD into Access would be the full ERD for the medical practice that you designed as a part of the previous group assignment, the ERD data dictionary that was created to accompany your entity relationship diagram. And I've also created a sample Excel file that I will show you shortly, where you can import your sample data into Access directly from Excel without having to type it manually in Access. In my preference, it just makes it easier. Instead of doing it on Access, I prefer doing it in Excel and then importing the Excel file into Access. So because the ERD might be pretty complicated, as you can see on the screen, this is what my ERD looks like, but your ERD might look slightly different depending on which objects you selected and which relationships you decided to show in your system design. So you don't have to follow exactly my ERD, you have to follow your blueprint that you created for the previous group assignment. So I'm going to select a part of this ERD to show how to convert it into Access. The parts that I'm focusing on are this object for patient. The patient requests an appointment, and the appointment assigns them to a doctor. So this is the part of the ERD that I will demonstrate, and I will use for this demonstration to convert into Access. For your group project submissions, you have to include all the other tables that are a part of your ERD, but for simplicity's sake and in order to make sure that you have enough time to do so, you can ignore these relationship tables, instead just focus on the actual entities. So let's look at the ERD data dictionary that I had created for this medical practice. I have switched screens to my ERD data dictionary that I had created. This accompanies the ERD that I just showed you. As you can see, the ERD data dictionary includes all of the tables which are included in my ERD, along with the attributes in each table, the definitions for each attribute, as well as the the data type for each table and each attribute. So since we decided to only show the patient, appointment, and doctor tables in this demonstration, I'm only selecting the part of the data dictionary that refers to the appointment table, so what you see on the screen here right now, plus the doctor table, where this is what I have in terms of the attributes for the doctor table, and the patient table. So this is the table that I had created in my ERD data dictionary for the patient, and these are all the attributes that I'm collecting for each patient. For each of those three tables that I'm borrowing from my ERD data dictionary, what I've done is I've created a sample database file where each table is a tab in my sample database Excel sheet. The first one is for appointment, and I've added all the attributes that I'm collecting for this particular table here in the columns. I've also added some sample data in here, so just so that if I run a simple query, the system is able to give me a result. So this is particularly for the appointment table, which collects the patient number, the patient name, the appointment number, the appointment date, the doctor that was assigned to them, and the doctor number. So for my appointment table, I'm keeping the appointment number as the primary key. Moving on to the next table, which I will use in this demonstration, is the doctor's table. And again, I took these column names, which are the attributes that I'm collecting for this particular table, directly from my ERD data dictionary for the doctor's table. And I've added 3 fictional names here for doctors, and I've filled out their information here. The same goes for the patient as well. The patient table column headings have been taken from the ERD data dictionary, and again I've added 3 sample data points in this table as well. So by creating this additional Excel file where I have my sample data filled in already, it makes the process easier to implement in Access. So let's go ahead and show how we can import this sample data into Access and then use these 3 tables to show the relationship between the tables and the ones that we have defined in our ERD. So keep in mind that formatting here is key. I have to be consistent with my original ERD. I have to be consistent with my original ERD data dictionary, and this file has directly been taken from the ERD and the data dictionary. So you're going to use your own ERD that you created and your own data dictionary that you created for your ERD. I would suggest that you can select the entities or the important tables from your ERD, put them in an Excel sheet like this, create a separate tab for each table, and then put in some sample data in there for each table, just so that when we move it to Access, we have some sample data for running queries. Also, I would recommend keeping your ERD and your ERD data dictionary open while you're doing this, because you might have to refer back to your ERD to see how the tables are related to each other. So now let's move on to Access. I'm going to switch my screens to my Access screen, and here I'm going to create a new database for my medical practice system. So again, I've just opened up Access, and this is the first page. I have to create a blank database. So this is a new database that we're creating from scratch. Give it any name that you might have named your medical practice. I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan, so I'm just going to use the Grey Sloan Clinic database as the name for my medical practice. So let's create this. Now we have a blank Access template in front of us that we're going to fill in with the tables that we took directly from our ERD and the attributes that we have described in our ERD data dictionary. So here Access gives you the option of creating your own tables manually in here, but for us, like I said, it might be easier to just import it from an Excel sheet where we have collected all the tables that we need to import into Access along with the sample data. So all of that is done in one single step instead of having to create a table here, creating attributes, and then filling it in with sample data. So over here, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'll go to the ribbon and click on External Data. This is where you're going to import the Excel sheet that I just showed you with the tables on each tab. You're going to click on New Data Source from File, Excel, and it's going to prompt this window here where you have to specify the source of your import. So let's go ahead and select the source. I have named my Excel sheet as ERD tables. I'm going to select import source data into a new table. Let's say that you had already imported the table and you want to add some additional data rows to it from an Excel sheet. You can select the append a copy of the records to the table. But for selecting the second option, you have to make sure that the table already exists. For us, it doesn't exist, so I have to import. That's the first option. Press OK. And it automatically picks up the 3 tabs that were stored in my Excel sheet. And we're going to add each of these tables one by one. The first table that I'm adding is the appointment table. So that's the correct tab. So I'll hit next. And here it's asking you if the first row contains column headings. It is true for us, so I'll keep that checked. Next. Now here you can try to manipulate the attributes as well as their data type. This is where you have to be consistent in terms of the data types that you mentioned in your ERD and select the same data types here as well. So let's take a look at our appointments table. And the first attribute is the patient number. Now, the patient number, the field name is fine. That's the reason why I kept it the same as my original data dictionary, because I can just keep the same names and I don't have to change anything here. The data type here, since patient number is not actually a numeric value that we will be performing calculations on, I would keep it to short text. So once you convert it to short text, you can obviously change this later on in Access itself, but for now, just to make the whole process easier, I will keep it short text here. Indexing for any key that is not a primary key, you don't have to select or change anything for the indexing. So since the primary key of my appointments table is appointment number, I don't have to change the default indexing option here. Next, I'm going to click on the next field, which is patient name. Again, patient name is short text, and it's not the primary key, so I'll keep the indexing to no. Let's move on to appointment number. Now, again, it's called appointment number, but it may have letters in it as well. So that's why I'm keeping the data type as short text. Now, keep in mind that if you're using these keys later on to define relationships between your tables, you have to make sure that the data type for each field that will be used later on for relationships is the same. So for example, appointment number will be there in the appointments table as well as in the patients table. So both of those fields should have the same data type. And since this appointment number is the primary key for my appointments table, I'm going to select yes to indexing and no duplicates because this is a primary key. Moving on to appointment date, Access automatically realizes that this is date, so I don't have to change anything here. Doctor's name looks fine too. And moving on to the right side, doctor number. Again, doctor number is not a numeric value that we will be performing operations on. This is more of like a doctor ID type of field. So I'll keep it to short text as well. So once I've done this for all the fields in my appointments table, I'm going to click next. And here, Access will ask you if you want to let it select the primary key or choose your own primary key. For me, since I know what my primary key has to be, I'll select the drop-down menu and select the field that I want to be my primary key for this particular table. And you can always change this later by selecting no primary key now and then change it later for each individual table, but doing it right now just saves you some time later on. So click next, and the table name is appointment, which is okay. So press finish. We don't have to save the import steps because we're not appending this table anymore, but if you wish, you can save these import steps. For us, for now, this does not that it's not required. So I'm just going to skip this. So now you'll see that my appointments table is ready, and it has been imported along with the sample data that I had filled in here. Let's move on and import our next table again using the same process. So again, I'm selecting the ERD table Excel sheet where I had created my sample tables. Press OK. And this time I'm going to select the doctor table because I've already imported the appointment table, and press next. Again, first row is column headings, so we'll go to the next step. And here, this is where you're going to spend some time, is deciding what your data type for each field is going to be. So doctor's name is short text, which is fine. Doctor number, remember that in the previous table we selected the data type short text for doctor number, and since we are going to be connecting these two tables together with a relationship, I need to make sure that this is also the same data type. If you don't assign the same data type, Access is going to give you an error when you try to determine the relationship between the two tables using this field. And since the doctor number is the primary key for my doctors table, I will select yes to indexing with no duplicates, and then go on to the next field in my table. Doctor's birthday is fine. State is also okay. City is okay. Telephone number, again, right now it's recognizing it as double, but because it's not actually a number that we're going to be using in calculations, you can change it to another data type, but for now this is fine. We can change this later on as well, so I'll just keep it as it is. And then doctor email is again short text, so all the fields I've reviewed their data types. I hit next. And now again, I'm going to select a primary key for this table, which is doctor number, and next, and decide a name for this table, which I want to keep as doctor. So finish and close. So now my doctors table is also imported along with the sample data that I had filled in the Excel sheet. So the last table that I want to import from the Excel sheet is the patients table. And I'm just repeating the same steps that we went over earlier. This time, make sure you select the patients tab where the patient data has been stored and click next. Next to column headings. Now here we're going to spend some time. Family member name is short text. Again, it's not a primary key, so I'll leave it as default. Family member 2 name is also short text. 3. Oops. And for the same, patient city is also okay. Patient credit card expiration date is recognized as date. Card type is short text. Date of birth is again date. Driver's license is short text. And patient effective date, again, it's date with time. Now you may not have all of these fields, but just use your own data dictionary for the ERD that you had created for the blueprint for this step. These are what I had in my data dictionary, so I'm using these. And then we have patient email, which again should be short text. Patient name is also short text. Patient number here, I want to specify that as short text as well. Because again, this number is more of an ID, not an actual numeric value. And for my patients table, this will be my primary key. So I'm going to select yes to indexing with no duplicates. And then we move on to phone number. It's fine as double for now. patient state is text, patient street number. We can store that as text as well. And finally, patient street name is short text, and zip code is, you can put it in as text as well. So press next. We've covered all the fields. We've checked the data type for all our fields. Hit next. Choose your primary key. This is the patient's table, so I'm going to select the patient number as my primary key and hit next. I want to keep the name as patient, so I'll hit finish and close. So now my patient table is also imported as is without any errors in my Access screen here. Since table 1 was the initial table that Access had by default created for us, I'll just get rid of this because we don't necessarily need it. So I have to close it here first. And now I can delete this table. Okay. So that table was never saved, which is why we were getting the errors. Anyway, so now I have the 3 tables which were a part of my ERD. Next, we're going to move on to decide the relationship between these tables based on your ERD. Make sure that for you, you have imported all the tables that were a part of your ERD, excluding the relationships table. I'm only talking about the entities table. So you can ignore the relationships table for this particular assignment, just to make it a little simpler. So I'm going to go to the database tools here, and here I'll select relationships. And once I click relationships, it's going to give me the options to select the tables that I want to determine the relationships for. And since I want to use all the tables, I'm just going to press Shift and the down arrow key to select all 3 tables and hit Add. Now all of my 3 tables show up here. Now I can determine the relationship and the cardinalities between these tables on my Access screen here. So I'll just drag the appointments table here in the middle and put the patients table to the left because that's where the process starts according to my ERD. And you can expand these if you want, just to make them a little bigger. But if your table has a lot of fields in it, then, and you have a lot of tables to show relationships for, I will not recommend expanding. I'm just expanding so that I can see all the fields that I need to decide the relationships. So, and since we have space here, I can just move them a little far apart. Now, according to my ERD, if I switch my screen back to the ERD, I can see that the patient requests an appointment, and the patient number is which connects the relationship of the patient table to the appointment table, and then a doctor is assigned to them. So following this path over here in my ERD, I'm just again showing you a portion of my ERD's Access implementation. For your actual project, you have to do it for all the entities table in your ERD, so it might be slightly more complicated. But for this demo, we're just focusing on patient requesting appointment and appointment assigning a doctor to them, this particular path in our ERD. So because this is the sequence in our relationship, that's what we have to follow in our Access interface as well. So let's move back to Access, and I'm going to connect the patient number with the patient number in my appointments table. And here, Access will ask you if this is what you meant, which is correct. You're going to enforce referential integrity. Recalling from our lectures, referential integrity enables the system to only accept data entries where this integrity is maintained. So an appointment cannot be given to a patient who does not have a patient number. That's what this refers to, and we want to enforce that. So we create, Oops. Okay. Looks like we have an error, which means that we might have to close our tables here and then continue with this. So again, create, and boom, our relationship has been created. And if you look at this tiny number at the top of this line that connects the two tables, this is what the ordinality and cardinality is how shown. It's how it's shown in Access. So one patient can have multiple appointments, which is why you see this infinity sign in here. This just refers to many. This is similar to the crow's feet that we saw in our ERDs. So the notation is slightly different, but it's not as different so that you cannot determine what it means. It just means a one-to-many relationship here. Now, the same thing, I'm going to connect the appointments table to the doctor's table, and here I'm using the doctor number as the field that connects these two tables. And again, enforce referential integrity, create, and again, Access determines that each doctor can have multiple appointments scheduled for the same day. So this way, you're going to bring in all of your tables and demonstrate the relationships between each of those tables with each other, as well as have some sample data included in your tables. It doesn't have to be a lot, just 2 rows is enough, just so that we can test queries and check if all of the tables have been added to the database correctly. So keep in mind that this process went on smoothly without any errors. We just got one error because the tables were open here and I had to close them before I could determine relationships between the tables. But if you have not spent some time during the initial import process fixing the data types, you might be getting some errors on this stage here. So in order to fix those errors, you can go back to each of the tables and fix the data types to make sure that the data types are the same for the same fields across the tables. But if you want to not have that problem, then I would recommend doing it in Excel the way I did it, and then spending some time during the import steps just so that you can make sure that this part of the process runs smoothly. So for your final group project, you're going to be submitting something like this. It's going to be an Access format. So you're just going to copy or send me this same Access file where you've shown all the tables that you showed in your ERD and their relationship with each other, along with maybe 2 rows of sample data in each table.